Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League was released worldwide yesterday, but before that it had its 3 days of early access, and in that period I reviewed the game. I released a first impressions review that you should check out, but I wanted to give more thoughts on the game now that I've played it for a lot more hours than I did then. And now that I've played it for a lot more hours, I have some updated thoughts, and those updated thoughts are, I really love this game. I've been addicted to it ever since it came out. I wake up at like 5:30 a.m. and I immediately turn on my PS5 and I get my Suicide Squad fix. It's been so long since a game has had those sort of hooks in me. And it honestly really depresses me to see how many negative reviews that this game is getting from the press, from critics, because again, in terms of the core gameplay, it's some of the most fun I've had in a very long time. So I wanted to make a follow-up video, and in this video I'm going to give you guys three reasons why I think Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League deserves to be played, why I think it's worthy of your time, and why I think in this case it's worth ignoring the critics and kind of forming your own opinion. But first I want to make a couple things clear for the sake of fairness. The first thing I want to say is that I'm not fanboying here. I'm not blind. I know that the game is technically not perfect. I know the game has a lot of flaws, and I do address a lot of my critiques with the game in my first review. The second thing is another thing that I mentioned in that first review, and that's that I don't hold the Arkham games in my heart really anywhere. I have no nostalgia for them. I did not grow up with them. I played Arkham Asylum for the first time just a couple weeks ago. So I went into this game with an open mind, more of an open mind than I believe a lot of Batman Arkham fans did. So anyway, let's get into the video, but also subscribe. I talk about video games all the time on this page. Within the next couple weeks, I'm going to be talking about Helldivers 2. I'm going to be talking about Banishers Ghosts of New Eden. I'm going to be talking about Skull and Bones as well, but I also talk about movies and I talk about TV shows and I do the occasional trailer reaction. Anyway, reason number one, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it has some of the most addictive gameplay that I have played in a very long time. Is it the most deep? Is it the most meaningful gameplay that we've gotten recently? No, absolutely not, but it scratches a different kind of itch. It scratches that arcadey gameplay itch, that immediate endorphin rush. I'm a person that needs to be in a specific type of mood to really consume any sort of media, to consume any sort of art, really. I'm not the type of person, even though I wish I was, I'm not the type of person that can just be like, okay, I'll watch a movie and then put on a movie. I need to be in the mood to watch a movie, and then I need to be in the mood to watch a specific type of movie. I'm the exact same way with video games. Like, for example, I love The Witcher 3, I love The Last of Us, I love the Resident Evil franchise, I love a lot of video games, but I can't just put in a game that I love and immediately have a good time. Even games that I love, I need to be in the mood for it. So very often I find myself just sitting down, wishing I could just put in a game, turn my brain off, and have fun without really being committed to it, without it really feeling like it weighs a lot mentally on me, and this is the game that I've been wanting for so long. I love the fast-paced intensity of this gameplay. I love all the numbers popping up when you're doing damage. I don't typically like that in video games, don't get me wrong, but something about it in this game is just so satisfying when you're throwing grenades, when you're using your afflictions. And speaking of inflictions, those are something you unlock later in the game as the story progresses, and it makes the gameplay even more fun. It's so fun having like an ice hammer as Harley Quinn, and you just turn a bunch of enemies into blocks of ice, and then you shoot them and they just explode. Or having Boomerang have this toxic substance on his melee weapon, and when you throw it at enemies, it makes enemies turn on each other, and you just watch them demolish each other. Yes, the mission structure for the most part leaves a lot to be desired. Whether you're doing main story missions or you're doing side quests, it often feels like, it doesn't feel like you are often doing the same thing over and over again, but for some reason it just doesn't bother me. It reminds me a lot of The Division. Now, I know a lot of people didn't like The Division, and I'm not saying those people are wrong. The Division was far from a perfect game. I know that that game had a lot of flaws, just like I know that this game has a lot of flaws. But when The Division came out, in terms of the gameplay, you were doing the same mission over and over again. It was like 4 separate missions, again, that just kept being recycled, and you would do one of the 4 missions over and over. But the gameplay was so fun, and it was so addictive that I didn't care that I was doing the same objectives. I just needed a reason to experience that gameplay. And Suicide Squad is giving me the exact same feeling. I'm sure you've had a game like that for yourself. It might not be this game, it probably wasn't The Division, but I'm sure if you look at all the games that you love, I'm sure that there's a game that you loved solely because the gameplay was addictive. And I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that maybe this game suffered from some mismarketing in terms of the gameplay. Now granted, I didn't really watch many trailers leading up to this game's release. I didn't really look into the gameplay. I didn't really read any developer notes. I didn't really read any FAQs. I wasn't really into the marketing of this game. It was kind of a blind buy for me. But I do know for a fact that one of the biggest critiques that this game had leading up to its release before it even came out was how different it was from the Batman Arkham games. Now, I understand the disappointment if you're a fan of the Batman Arkham games and then you see this game being so different. But this game falls right into line, in my opinion, with games like Just Cause 3 or Just Cause 4 or Sunset Overdrive. If you liked those games and you go into this game expecting it to be like a Just Cause, like a Sunset Overdrive, and for it to invoke the same sort of just fun, addictive, crazy gameplay experience, I think you're going to have a good time with this game. Reason number 2 why I think that you should play this game is the story. This game has a surprisingly good story. I'm not a huge fan of DC Comics. I'm not a huge fan of DC characters. I'm not a huge fan of DC storylines. Now, granted, I haven't experienced that many of them, but it's never been anything that's called to me. But I found the story in this game to be a lot better than I was expecting. And it's gotten to the point where I've been genuinely excited to play each story mission to see how this story unfolds and unravels. The characters, not just the core Suicide Squad, but the supporting characters around you, they're far more fleshed out than I think anyone was expecting them to be. And the dynamic between the Suicide Squad themselves is so fun. I genuinely like the dynamic of this group more than I did in the 2 Suicide Squad movies. Their dialogue with each other when you're out in the world, it's not nearly as repetitive as a lot of other games. I've only ever heard the same lines of dialogue repeated a couple times. And I'm not going to get into story spoilers here, but there's a lot of twists, there's a lot of turns, the story progresses in a lot of fun ways. And I said this in my original review, but I'm going to say it again here because I think that it's true. I genuinely believe that this game, when they were making this game, it was approached as a story-driven, fun experience first, and then the live service aspects were kind of put on top of that. I don't believe that this game was made to be a live service game first and foremost, and then they just bullshitted a story on top of that. If that is the case, they did a damn good job at masking that. And reason number 3 why I think that you should play this game is that you can absolutely play through this game as if it was a single player story-driven game. Hell, that's how I'm playing it. Yes, there's a lot of side quests that make things feel kind of repetitive. Yes, there's a lot of side quests that make it clear that gear and getting better gear and better stats are kind of a core aspect of the gameplay. Absolutely, that's true. But also, for the most part, you can absolutely go from story mission to story mission to story mission and just experience this cool and interesting story, and then on top of that, just play the fun, addictive gameplay. And I see it being reported that this game is very, very short, that you can beat it in 6, maybe 7 hours, and I'm sure that that's true. But by the time that I finished the main story mission, I had significantly more time in that. I think I had 16 to 17, maybe 18 hours in that game. And I did not go out of my way to do everything. I did not do every main story quest. I completely, for the most part, ignored all of the Riddler challenges. I mainly just did the main quests and then dabbled in the side stuff when I saw something that looked interesting. And also, there are 2 critiques that I gave this game in my first review, and I'm happy to report that those critiques have been remedied. They're not a problem anymore. One of those being that there was just so much dialogue over dialogue, and it was just so annoying constantly hearing voices in your ear and dialogue interrupting other dialogue. Again, as you progress in the game, that's not a problem for me anymore. That has cleared up. And another critique that I gave the game in my first review is that the pacing kind of felt off, that you were constantly being interrupted by cutscenes, and I could never just get into the flow of the game. Very shortly after I made that review, that problem also fixed itself. Now, granted, if you start this game, I'm sure it will be a problem for you too in the first few hours, but rest assured that that's not a problem once you get later in the game. Anyway, that's the 3 reasons why I think that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League absolutely deserves to be played. That's the 3 reasons why I think critics, for the most part, are wrong, though they do have valid points. Again, this video isn't me saying critics are wrong. This is just me giving a different perspective, a different opinion. Let me know in the comments if you've been enjoying this game, or let me know in the comments if you're still gonna ignore this game, or let me know in the comments if you think that you're gonna give this game a chance. I haven't really touched endgame content. I haven't really touched the live service aspects of this game, but depending on how this video performs, I will absolutely make a video going over the end game. But thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far. Consider subscribing, and yeah, see you next time.